There's huge drama brewing in Croatia, in a situation that, honestly, if the football gods were trying to create a situation that could maximize tomfoolery, I don't think that they could have done any better of a job. But I do have some sad news before we get into that. It has been raining in New York over the last couple of days, and so I have not been able to run. I realize, I try and keep you up to date on all of this, but it's been raining. I don't know what you want from me. Okay, I'm going to try to go run after this, after I record this video today, but you know what they say? No promises. Okay, now back to this. Sometimes I feel like I get a gift from the heavens, perfectly honestly. Thank you for the person that tagged me in this. I think this one was on Twitter. But this is a perfect Zealandism. This was designed for me. I love this. There's elements of cheeky strategy in this. There's mainstream league, obviously. It's the Croatian league, one of the biggest leagues in the world. Not one of those piddly little leagues like the Premier League that I try to avoid talking about as much as I can, generally because there's so many other things happening out there in the world of football. And it involves not only the Croatian league, but not Dinamo Zagreb, not Hajduk Split, right? This is a showdown, really, between the bottom two teams in the league, right? And if you look at the Croatian top league, you'll see that Rijeka, Dinamo Zagreb, Hajduk Split, the big teams are up at the top. But then at the bottom, there's NK Lokomotiva and Šibenik. Those are the two teams that are battling bravely against relegation, right? Just the last spot in a 10-team league is the team that's going to go down, right? So only one of those two teams is going to be relegated to the relegation zone. And they're going to battle it out over the last couple of matches. Now, I am not entirely sure how many matches they have to play. I believe it's 36. So the fact that there's a 6-point gap here leaves Šibenik alive. But I'm not entirely sure. That's something that I have briefly tried to look up. But the Croatian Football League here. Or maybe, actually, a good way to figure this out would be, you get to watch, did you see how the sausage is made here? I can just go back to last year. Yeah, they play 36. Okay, cool. Ball knowledge was intact. They play 36 matches. So three matches left. Šibenik needs to basically get points out of all three of those matches. But there is a looming and potentially dangerous and potentially troublesome points deduction that is hanging over Šibenik's head, which could, of course, basically eliminate them, right? They're going to need a lot of things. I mean, they're the worst team in the league, okay? They're going to need a lot of things to go their way in order to actually not get relegated. It's still totally possible. We've seen crazier things happen. But if they get a 2-point deduction, it's basically over. And that's where Mario Satanovich comes in. Now, Mario Satanovich is a former Croatian international player. He was a defender, right? He stopped playing in 2009, and he ended up becoming a manager. He came up through Dinamo Zagreb, managed their first team, and from 2022 to 2023, he managed Šibenik, who are the team that were in dead last. Okay, he managed them for a year. He's not somebody that contributed to where they are at this particular season. But as this article that was sent to me details, Šibenik's preparing a drastic measure if they don't give him 2 points back. This has to do with money paid to Mario Satanovich. Because Mario Satanovich, while no longer the coach of Šibenik, is the coach of Lokomotiva. And that is very important for the rest of this story. So this guy is former coach of Šibenik, current coach of NK Lokomotiva. All right, and the issue at hand is Šibenik and their 2-point deficit. Thursday morning, apparently, they are going to know the results of the HNS, which is the Croatian FA's investigation into this particular issue. They have until midnight Wednesday to send the HNS documentation that guarantees that money paid to Mario Satanovich's account really relates to the debt Šibenik has towards him. So that's the big headline. But what is essentially going on here is Šibenik, according to the FA of Croatia, still owes Mario Satanovich money. He's apparently not the only person. Right? Apparently there are multiple people that Šibenik owes money to. But this is where we get into a particularly interesting position, because obviously Šibenik has been made aware of this, right? And in any league that's worth its salt, and the Croatian league, despite not being the biggest, is definitely worth its salt, you have to make sure that players and coaches are getting paid. And the Croatian FA made Šibenik aware of that, and the company that owns the club, so the shell game here, we're going 2 layers out, the company that owns the club, paid Mario Satanovich the amount of money. The doubts about the money that was paid to Mario Satanovich. So this is the reason for the doubt. It was not paid by Šibenik because his account was blocked, but rather it was paid jointly by the company that owns Šibenik and the company. This is the shell game I already described. This is a translated article, so it's a little harder to follow if you're wondering who wrote it. These are companies from Germany, and it is clear that they paid money to settle Šibenik's debt. Everything seems clear. However, Satanovich's lawyers have received absolutely no evidence that this payment related to Šibenik's debt to their client. Well, what else does it relate to? Like, I'm sorry. I understand the gamesmanship here, because what is going on, basically, is that Satanovich, and maybe this is rightfully so, because maybe the people running Šibenik are really sketchy and skeezy, and they're, you can't trust that they're not going to pull the money back. Satanovich does not want to sign that Šibenik's debt to him has been settled because he is aware of what could happen. Namely, if he signs to remove the freeze from Šibenik's account, so basically signs that Šibenik, because originally his account was blocked, right? He signs off that Šibenik can interact with his bank account again. Who can guarantee that the very next day he will not receive a notification from the bank that the money was paid to him by mistake and that he will have to return it? So maybe, I don't know. And this article doesn't do much to clarify, even though it is a good article in detail. It doesn't do much to clarify if Šibenik is really that sketchy of an institution that you'd have to worry about them doing this. Or we have to consider the possibility here. And by possibility, I mean what I believe is happening, which is Mario Satanovich is looking at this situation. He's coaching at his new club. He's just ahead of his old club. And as long as he goes to the FA and says, I don't feel completely comfortable with the money that they've given me because the source that the money came from, the FA has now turned around and gone to Šibenik and is threatening them with a 2-point deduction, which could make all the difference in this relegation race, unless Šibenik can prove that that money is to pay off what it's supposed to pay off. Now, this sounds, obviously, when you get into the weeds of it, like a very complex financial situation. Right, you're going to have to understand laws in Croatia, international wire transferring laws and stuff, because the company that it's being paid out from is coming from Germany, right? And so this is a situation where I'm not going to be able to give you the specifics on whether Satanovich has a ton of ground to stand on and he's totally in the right, or whether Satanovich is totally grandstanding and he is just trying to get the point deduction for the team that he is competing against. This article says, and that is completely understandable because Šibenik's leaders have ignored him too many times. So this sounds like the payoff from this company has come at the end of a very long standoff, right? That there has been quite a standoff. And it certainly sounds like the owners of Šibenik and Mario Satanovich do not see eye to eye on a lot. Like this is the end of a long saga that I didn't get to follow on local Croatian television. And now I am reading an article kind of at the end of it where I feel like if you're reading this article, they're almost assuming you already know certain parts of this story, right? It feels like reading this article that you already know certain parts of this story. Of course, such a decision to add that point deduction would have far-reaching consequences. Šibenik is still lagging behind Lokomotiv by 4 points. Now, you see in this table currently that 2-point deduction is still factored in. So if they actually don't have that 2-point deduction, they're able to provide whatever weird documentation the Croatian FA requires in this situation, then they would only be 4 points behind, which means they only need to win 2 of their last 3 with NK Lokomotiva kind of bottling the rest of it away. That opens up a lot more possibilities than just, oh, we need to get points in all of our last 3 matches or else we are screwed. Unofficial signals are coming from Subicevets, who I believe is one of the administrators for the club, that in the case the club would intentionally send juniors to the field in the last 3 rounds if they're given the point deduction. So this is another layer to this story, right? In that you're basically using whatever leverage you have. Mario Satanovich is saying there's no proof that this money was to pay off the debt the club owed me, and there's no proof that they're going to take that money back. And Šibenik is saying, this is ridiculous. If you give us this 2-point deduction, we're going to protest by playing our youth teams for the last 3 matches, which is important because apparently Šibenik, also trying to fight against relegation, is involved in the title race in Croatia because they are playing against teams that are involved in that. Hajduk Split is one of their opponents. Hajduk Split is 1 point, I believe 1 point off, 3 points off the league title right now. So what Šibenik is currently threatening to do is compromise the competitive integrity of the Croatian league if they're given this 2-point deduction, if they really are 6 points behind. If they aren't given this 2-point deduction, then everything said it'll be fine. Šibenik still hopes that this will not happen, that the members of the appeal commission will reasonably conclude that Satanovich was paid the money on time, only that the payment outside the deadline had to be legally proven. On the other hand, Šibenik warned back in December to urgently pay the debt to coaches Satanovich and Shinati, that's the other guy, which they took lightly, so they took action literally at the last minute. And so this article is pointing out that they really pushed these deadlines around, and that's, of course, probably why Satanovich is angry. They still haven't bothered to legally support the payment that came from an unknown, not the club's account. An unknown account. I mean, I guess that's just a bit of a different translation. We know it came from the kind of parent companies, at least according to this reporting. And the appeals committee will make that decision on Thursday. So I'm assuming they are going to get the information in by Wednesday at midnight, because if they don't, then they don't have a leg to stand on with saying that the league is being too harsh on them. Really, what we have here is the Real Housewives of Croatia. A fabulously interesting situation where the coach of the second-to-last team is holding the entire club below him on the table hostage in a relegation battle when it comes to the finances, the financials of some long overdue payment based off his former work at the club. Whose side are you on? Šibenik, Mario Satanovich, or the third side where we just know you and I know just enough to be dangerous. We know just enough to know that this is a really entertaining situation, but we don't know enough at all to tell you who's in the right or who's wrong, just that it's interesting. And all of a sudden I will be paying attention to the bottom of the Croatian league this Thursday when I didn't have that on my calendar beforehand necessarily.